going on, everybody? Welcome in to the North End Podcast, episode 227. My name is Zach Graham, your host here in the North End, joined, as always, by my good buddy. He's on record as my best friend. His name is Ian Michaud, and we call him... sitting here on a Sunday, Austin, Texas, coming off of a road draw up there against the Loons of Minnesota United. A lot to get to here today. So I'll ask you, as I always do, how you feeling, my friend?
I'm doing well, man. We had a good day yesterday. Had a little pool party over at our buddy's spot, the Airmo. Thank you for hosting. That was a lot of fun. Got to watch the game with the homies and satisfied with the point. I think that there was some more on the table for us last night for sure. But a point up there in Minnesota versus that quality team, I think, is a solid result for this club and a positive sign, once again, that this team is trending in the right direction right now. So you got to follow this up Wednesday with 3 points, in my opinion. But things are looking up right now, and I like that.
Yeah, we'll certainly talk about kind of the recent results, where we're headed to close out this month. But one thing I was thinking this morning, dude, to shout out to Guillermo again for hosting. I'm so glad we couldn't get the projector set up out there, because then we just didn't have to deal with the mosquitoes and I was getting eaten alive. So, sometimes the technological failures can actually work in your favor. So let's go ahead and get into all this. We'll recap last night's match against Minnesota. We've got last business day recapping the second team's match against Minnesota's second team that happened on Friday. We're looking ahead and previewing Wednesday's match back home at Q2 against Real Salt Lake, seeing RSL for the first time this season, and then cleaning it up with the nonsense at the end. Before we get into the rest of episode 227, just want to remind you all listening or watching on the YouTube channel that the best way to support the show, or rather, you can support us financially by downloading the audio versions of all of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts. You can toggle on auto downloads and support the show going forward without having to think about it again. You can go the extra mile, rate and review the show wherever you get your podcast, or you can go the extra mile like our friend Linda, who double dipped, downloaded the audio version, watch the YouTube. So if you are watching on the YouTube, hitting that subscribe button helps us grow the show. And you can hit the notification bell to know when a live stream pops up or a new episode goes live. And then, of course, on this episode, help us battle the YouTube algorithm overlords by hitting the thumbs up, like the video. Atone for your sins, Minnesota. Too many fuck you Stuver chants. Wash yourselves clean in the waters of the North End. And we will talk about those Minnesota United chants here. No real news between the Open Cup victory on Wednesday night and this one kicking off on Saturday. Very, very quick turnaround. Though we did, I guess the one piece of news kind of heading into the lineup being released on Saturday evening was the injury report, where Mikael Dessler was no longer present. So off of that injury report for the first time since March 8th. And then Danny Pereira listed questionable, and he did not end up being active for this one. Robert Taylor still listed as out, but I've made a little bit on the pod over the last month that like Dessler's 8-week timeline turned into 11, I think. So I wasn't totally sure when we're actually going to get Danny and Bobby T back. But it does seem like the timeline Nico gave us, I believe after I don't know if this is the Houston match or the Vancouver match, but very recently, it looks like at least Dessler were checked off the list, and with Danny upgraded to questionable, even though he didn't play, I think we see him active on the bench this Wednesday. And then hopefully Robert Taylor on the road against San Diego. Again, if we can stay healthy headed into these summer months where the schedule is much more forgiving and maybe a little bit advantageous with the Club World Cup and some of our opponents there at the end of June, early July, you could be setting yourself up for success and a push back into the top half of the West.
Absolutely. It's going to take some time. I was looking at the table earlier today, looking where we were sitting at, still there in 9th place, and we got a ways to go. That's why this matchup here versus RSL is a very important one, but this is more positive news coming this way for the Verde and Black, right? You get Dessler back in the fold. We haven't picked up any other knocks since those guys went out, since Robbie Taylor went down versus El Paso there. Danny potentially getting back into the works coming up here soon. Like, this is what we've been asking for, and still something that's being like looked at as a super positive for me, because if we're full strength and we're playing the way that we played versus Vancouver, particularly that type of quality of team, you saw the game last night versus Minnesota, that type of quality of team, we're right there with them, and we've had this little tough stretch. And I will say I tip my hat to the boys who've been out there just battling this month, because I'm fucking exhausted. It's just like we don't go out there and play 90 minutes of soccer. I'm so ready for this month to be absolutely over. So I do want to tip my hat to those boys. Still got to close out strong here, but love to get that news about Dessler. I mean, that is just, it's so encouraging. It's awesome. We need him back, and we need Danny back, and Robbie back for sure. But you get those guys back, man, you're feeling good.
Yeah, man. I mean, speaking of doing nothing, I think I'm sore from a combination of like raking leaves yesterday and playing pool basketball. So like that's how washed I am right now. Lineup comes out, on paper, you're like, okay, we're going to this 5-back right on the defensive end and then pushing those wing backs up in possession. And that was exactly what we saw roll out here. Stuver in net, Gallagher, Svatok, Biru, Heinzeich, and Kolmanič on the back line there, not necessarily in that order. This is one of those instances where the Fat Mob lineup did lie. No, Biru was not in the middle of that 5-man back line. But then your 2 defensive midfielders in Sabovic and Dubrsarski and the 3 DPs up top. So again, it's very, very similar on paper and then in practice in this match to how we saw the team approach, I think, FC Cincinnati a couple weeks ago. And obviously not able to get any sort of result out of that one. But at the time, again, we were a little bit lower, I think, in terms of the vibes back then. Yeah. And that was a step forward. And I think you saw another step in this one.
I mean, we talked about how we did not envy Nico and his staff trying to roll out a lineup for this game, because it was really a contest that we knew we were going to have a tall task ahead of us, no matter who they rolled out. We know how talented they are, that they were playing at home. And then we have this very winnable game on Wednesday back at home versus RSL. So, we were talking about and speculating about rotation, what it could look like. And I thought that Nico and his staff did a really good job of mixing this up a little bit. You get Duber in there with Sabo, which I liked, get Ilya some rest, who had been playing quite a bit as of late. And then you still get the 3 DPs in there. You get 2 of them off to save them a bit for Wednesday. So, and Mirtu of those 3 DPs had been the one who has been playing the least amount as of late. So good for him to go a full 90 last night. I thought the coaching staff did a really good job. And I thought about it, we're over there at Guillermo's hanging out, and we knew this was a very similar approach to the FC Cincinnati, right? And you don't get the result there. So to be able to have the confidence that this was going to be a successful formation and lineup, despite the fact that you dropped those 2 points to a better team in FC Cincinnati, and to your point, being in a much lower place with this team in regard to the vibes and what it was looking like, the momentum, the actual style of play, to be able to go back to this and have confidence in it, I thought was a really good signal. And like, we've been giving Nico some crap as of late for not understanding the identity of the team at times, not having the pulse, but I think they nailed it last night. And I think they did a really good job. You went in there with an approach that was going to be advantageous versus their style of play. We made them have the ball a bit more than I think that they wanted to. And I thought it worked out really well.
Yeah, and I had this in the notes for the post-game takeaways, but I think it's apt to bring it up now, because just to highlight what you said, the game plan was to make the team who doesn't want to play with the ball have the ball as much as possible. And I think after they do get the opener here early on, that 10-minute span between them going up and us finding the equalizer, you saw us start to have to be on the ball more, because when you go behind, you have to throw that, or it's just easier for them to kind of make your plan null and void. So 53% possession for Minnesota on the night is the most they've had in any match across all competitions this year. I put in one of the many group chats that I'm in this morning that the operation was a success, and I've said in the past, but the patient died. Well, in this case, the patient tied. So the bench was Ilya, Owen, Hader, Mikel Dessler, Steph Cleveland, Julio Cascante, Riley Thomas, CJ Fodre, and Diego Rubio. So getting into this one, or I guess also of note, Kelvin Yeboah came off the bench for them, as did Bongi Hlongwane. So there was some rotation on the Minnesota side as well. And then one other note, you see Joseph Rosales come on at the half, and we were under the impression that he was going to be suspended for this match. This would have been his 3rd MLS match suspended of the 3-match suspension he was given. But our buddy Tim Thompson, the stat man, helped me out with a link from when the suspension was given, that their Open Cup match against St. Louis also counted towards the suspension. And that doesn't make much sense to me if you get suspended in MLS league play, that you could be then in an outside competition serve a suspension. I guess the loophole there is that whether it's a team suspension or a league suspension, it's all the same. The team is the league in MLS, so they can do whatever they want. But petition to let Julio be suspended on Wednesday and not suspended for the Open Cup game, I think that's only fair.
I think it might be fair. I thought it was ridiculous. You told me before that, and we saw him rolling out there, and it was just like, what? Like, we knew he was suspended, and like, he probably, like you said when we were chatting about it, he probably enjoyed not having to play in that US.
Yeah, right.
If he even would have played in that matchup, you never know.
They rotated there too.
Absolutely ridiculous ruling, in my opinion, there. But we press on.
So the 4th minute of this one is where we'll start, and it's John Gallagher whipping a ball in from the left side, probably 15 yards above the penalty area on the left, and it skips off the head of Romero and towards the back post, where Jefferson Diaz and Mirtu Azuni are kind of running towards that back post, and Diaz ducks under it, so it pings off Azuni's back, and then Boxall's able to slide it out to Gressel for a clearance. But then Oluwaseyi heads it back towards his own net and right to Brandon, and BV takes a touch to settle it, and then half volleys towards net, where this is not like the greatest save. It's not even the best save of the game, but a very solid play by Dane St. Clair to get up for this one, because it was curling or bending rather, dropping into the net. And St. Clair was able to kind of paw it down and control it there, but kind of inexplicable from Oluwaseyi there. And a good shot by Brandon.
It was an awesome shot. Little banana kick there, had some curve on it, was ducking down. It was going to be in the net if St. Clair didn't make a solid save. Nothing spectacular there, but it was very akin to the play versus Cincinnati, where Kolmanič heads one and it goes to Evander and he blasts that one-timer. It was almost the same thing, but I'm glad to be on that side of it than the other side of it. But a nice rip here. We saw that coming, and as soon as he was about to one-time it off the catch there, it was like, oh shit, this has some potential. So I like to see that. That was a good rip.
And 2 minutes later, it's a good ball through here by Carlos Harvey to Robin Lod on the left side of the Austin 18-yard box. Svatok slides on the ground past him, and then Galley tries to close down. And right before Gallagher gets there, Lod pokes a shot at Stuver, and he scoops it up easy. There was not a ton of power behind that at all. But look, I said it in the moment, I don't blame the weak shot towards Stuver's 5-hole, because it worked out pretty well for him 3 weeks ago. So Robin Lod just making sure Stuver's awake today.
It wasn't going to happen twice, that's for sure. Man, I was scared when Svatok went to the ground there, because I thought it would have been, he had his hand out like that. I thought it could have been the same call that we got versus Houston, but fortunate to walk away here without any damage done.
In 16th minute, Austin, I think to this point, doing a good job of forcing Minnesota to play with possession. And in this moment, Harvey again plays a ball from their back line, this time all the way up to the edge of the Austin 18. And Marcanic nods it down towards Oluwaseyi. But BHI gets there first and chests it in the direction of Svatok. And miscommunication here. I thought Svatok's holding off Marcanic, and BHI just backs up. I thought Brendan should have cleared this out, but that miscommunication where the ball's just kind of slowly rolling into the Austin penalty area, it allows Marcanic to get around Svatok and fire a shot that Brendan deflects out for a corner. And then you've got Pereira on corners. His service skips what I thought was live, just right through the scrum to Romero on that other side. I think on the replay, it looks like it may go off BHI's back on a little deflection there. But either way, once that ball gets to Romero, he pops it right back towards the far post. And Boxall is there on the second ball, uncovered, heads it home. I also think Brad Stuver can be more aggressive, not just in this moment, but more aggressive and decisive overall in some of these chances to either punch or flat out catch some of the chances. And that's not the first time, I think, especially in some of these away matches, where we've, at least from our interpretation, where we're watching these games, come out there, Stuver. It's not the first time I feel like we've come away from a match feeling like he could be more decisive in those moments.
I mean, for me, having watched him now for what, 4 years, 5 years,
yeah, 4.5 next week.
So Jesus, that's the one thing that's a knock on him, in my opinion. He does not like to come out and really command the box and be physical because, like, we're watching the game with all our friends there. Me and my brother are both calling. You come out with your knee up and your hands out, and like that's your space, man. You got to own it. He's in this ball's in the 6. That's your zone. And to his credit, he does not come out later on one of these other attempts and makes an incredible save. But in my opinion, my humble opinion, and Brad will know more about goalkeeping than I ever will, I do think he needs to have a bit more command of that zone and be a bit more aggressive coming out and being like, no, I'm shutting this down. This is my space. Do you want to talk a bit about the BHI shakiness early? He has this play here. He has a turnover a little later. That's a really bad pass. And like we talked about with that 5-back, at times there has been some poor communication and like being in the right space. And I think it rears its head again in the second half where we have, I believe, Yeboah try to pass to someone and then just run past their whole defense and like nobody picks up the ball. So that's something we do got to clean up with this 5-back because it has been visible to me at least multiple times when we've been in this formation, whether it be starting in this formation or shifting back to it, trying to preserve a lead.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and goddamn, dude, in this, for it to be Michael Boxall, who whenever we play Minnesota is my least favorite person in the building, and for him to score it like this, and then what happens right after, because in the 18th minute, like right after the restart, I think the ball's pinged back and forth once each, but like in the 18th minute, loose touch by Svatak, and that allows Pereira to start the break. And credit to Alexander here for recovering and closing it off on the inline and forces the turnover. And it comes to Dubrsarski, and instead of clearing it out, he tries to play a pass to Gallagher. And I don't think the decision in that moment is necessarily wrong, but the execution of it is so poor that it allows Marcanic to just step into it and steal the ball, picks it off, crosses it right to the head of Oluwaseyi, and he nods it on frame with a lot of power. And like, this is, I think I said in the moment to you guys, is like, or maybe just to Debo, is like, that's why he doesn't come out, because Stuber can make that fucking phenomenal save. He's just trying to be fancy. But again, this in the moments following the goal, it felt like the wheels were maybe about to come off.
Yep, absolutely. And those are two of the things that we talked about. If you read the preview article for this matchup, was that you got to be good with the ball. Any sort of sloppiness, they're coming right at you. And Oluwaseyi is going to be in the mix, and they're going to be giving him service that he's going to go up there and get. And they did both of these things in about a 10-second stretch here. Hell of a save by Brad. Once again, keeping us in this game and allowing us to get this point, because you go down 2-0 here, I think you very well could have gotten your ass handed to you. Pretty convincingly if you go down 2-0.
Yeah, and again, like I mentioned earlier, really the 10 minutes after the goal, it's those type of Minnesota counters when they get on the ball, and when they're not, it's them sitting back and saying, all right, now you guys get to play with the horseshoe. And we've seen this before just 3 weeks ago. But in this moment in the 27th minute, Loons win back possession and matriculate up the pitch, and they end up winning a throw in the Austin half, probably 15 yards over the midline. Certainly close enough where we know here comes Michael Boxall to huck this one in there. And he takes the throw in. It pings, I think, off Romero and then Duber, and the ball falls to the foot of John Gallagher, and John takes a touch towards that right sideline to open some space. And as he takes that touch, you see Osman turn, put his head down, and start sprinting down that same sideline. And John lofts it forward where Buka can run onto it with some space, and he takes 2 touches, and maybe not the cleanest touches, but the speed is just, these guys are not catching up to him. And I think this is fantastic pass number 1 through and around 3 Loons defenders in transition, bends it right into the path of Mirtu Azuni, and Azuni takes a touch to settle it, and Will Trapp is now recovering towards Mirtu, and Mirtu cuts it to his left, or passes it to his left, right into the path of a charging Žan Kolmanič, of all people. And I want to credit Azuni before we talk about the goal, because he makes this pass perfectly into the path of Žan, and Kolmanič is not in the frame when he makes the pass. And then, lefty comes up one time, buries it far post, and now the equalizer is in. Žan Kolmanič, first goal in his Austin FC career. You were outside, so like I don't know if we maybe should have kept you outside or not. And like you also are probably the person outside of friends and family that Žan Kolmanič wanted to see that fucking goal. And so I'm sure now he's mad at you because you didn't see it. But goddamn, man, congrats. So happy for him. That was a great goal, both individually and as a team. The counter was clinical. The finish was awesome. And I couldn't be more happy for Žan because we know he doesn't get a ton of opportunities. We know if you come to the North End, you don't hear a lot of good things said about Žan Kolmanič outside of, his left foot. And, man, it's just it felt good to see him get one and kind of, I'm sure it raised his spirits.
He was definitely feeling good after, for sure. But you'd be hard pressed to find a clip of highlights of this team throughout its history where we've had a better direct counterattack. Where the ball's out, we play one of our best players into space. He makes a fantastic ball to one of our other players, who then makes another fantastic ball to someone who's not even in the frame, like you said, but the instincts. I don't know if there was communication there, if Žan said something and was like, hey, play this off, and Mirtu heard that, or he just knew that he'd be crashing in. But like you said, from start to finish here, to get the release from Johnny, the touch from Buka, see that speed on display, break those lines, you beat them at their game with this play right here because they're pushed up a little bit. You caught them up the field a little too high, and just a fantastic, wonderful sequence for everyone involved. And I am absolutely thrilled for Kolmanič to go ahead and get that goal. It was a beautiful shot. You know what I mean? We've been asking guys, DP level players, to have that type of composure and to put the ball past the keeper when you should. And he did. I thought it was an incredible shot and just super, super excited for him. That was awesome. And I'm glad he was feeling giddy about that. So good for him, man. It was great.
Man, I should have clipped before we started recording. I should have clipped from Thursday's pod where I said, I think you get Žan here. And I think you said, nah, I don't want Kolmanič.
No, get out of here. Well, caveat.
We got both of them.
Yes, you said Kolmanič for B-Roo.
For B-Roo,
okay.
Okay. We got
both. You came from my boy.
So Žan actually was talking about this in the post-game presser. Of course, he's the player made available on the Zoom call to the media last night. And he said one thing I think we learned here, I haven't heard it before. He said that he and Mirtu speak to each other in Croatian. And he said, apparently he said he was screaming at him in transition, but not in Croatian. He was just yelling his name. But so again, like that communication from Žan and the wherewithal from Mirtu to lay it off perfectly like that. It was well worked. And I think I don't want to take any shine away from Žan because this is his moment, but a lot of people are coming for Mirtu, and it's not all sunshines and rainbows. I know you and I will talk about this in a moment, but the assist count too. Like somebody has to generate these, and that was a fantastic assist. And hopefully that is a building block for Mirtu to get the goal scoring going here over the next couple games.
I sure hope so, because I do think that we have some differing opinions on this right now. But it was a great pass, and it was a great pass. It was a great look, and someone's got to get the assist. But again, it was like I want to get to that point because I have heralded B-Roo for wanting to be in those moments, and it was clear that Žan wanted to be involved in that moment, and then he made the most of it. So an absolutely fantastic way to open up the accounting records here for Kolmanič.
Yeah, and it wasn't the only time he was making runs down that left side, or high pressing too in certain moments to try to pin Minnesota back. 31st minute here, back in action, is good line breaking pass by Dubrsarski from the midfield to find Galley about 25 yards ahead. And Žan ushers it on to Mirtu Uzuni, and Uzuni attacks the top of the area before Harvey comes in and makes a tackle to jar it loose. And that ball trickles into the path of Vasquez, but Mirtu is also chasing it. And those kind of guys kind of converge on it at the same time. But then the ball kind of squirts through the back line and Mirtu runs it down and can't connect fully on his shot. And then the flag goes up anyways on John Gallagher. And that's just like, where I understand letting a play out, but also like, fuck, man, you're like, these guys almost kicked each other. Like if they just broke each other's feet or something, and the ball, it's just offside anyways. So anyways,
Yeah,
2 minutes late. Go ahead.
bang, bang play, poor
Yeah.
miscommunication. They're both trying to make a play on the ball
Yeah.
there, so can't be too upset with that. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was a late flag.
I mean, when we've seen that a couple times in the box this year, I think there was a Buka and Hader one of the first games of the year at home where they both come up to it and just then they both, hold up because it's just a little bit of confusion in that moment. 2 minutes later, we get the first caution of the match to Markanic for a late challenge on Sabovic. And in the moment when we were watching last night, I know all of us were extremely confused at how Minnesota got a free kick after a yellow card was awarded to Markanic. Or Markanic rather, but I did see on the replay, there was advantage played to Minnesota before the whistle because Duber fouled Markanic. And then so foul on us for the advantage played, but card to Markanic for taking out Sabovic. So, and this was not in the notes and it should have been. So I'm glad you jogged my memory before we started. Leading up to the end of the first half here, Mirtu Izuni receives a ball on the left side, 10 yards out from goal or something. And I want to say it was deflected off a Minnesota defender, a header that nodded it back.
It was I think it was Diaz.
Okay. But the ball falls to him. He chests it down and is able to hit it on the volley. And it just goes over the target, man. And I think that the criticism of Mirtu and the lack of goal scoring is 100% fair. But in these individual instances, I have a hard time harping on just this one or just the one that comes later in the 90th minute because, like I said a couple episodes ago, it's you're allowed to miss some of these chances. But if you're just not scoring any of them, then the rage of the fan base is going to come down and rightfully so. I'm just trying to stay positive with him in terms of his scoring because I interpret his play as him doing a lot of good things still, whether it's the assist, right? Coach mentions in the post-match how a lot of the chances he had in this match he created for himself, and I think that is also true upon the rewatch. And the effort we've gotten from him defensively is stuff, man. I mean, and this may come if the goals continue to evade him. We may get to a point where the body language becomes a problem, but I remember former DPs who did miraculous things, but also enraged me once a month because they stopped playing defense because they were frustrated. And I have not seen anything close to that out of Izuni yet. So I'm still very, very confident that things will continue to improve for him because last night as a whole was one of his better games in an Austin uniform. And similar to the team, you can have a good night and still not be where you need to be overall.
For sure. Totally. For me, it's just been a trend that is very, very concerning. He's a goal-scoring DP attacking player. So that means we need you to score goals. And this team struggles to score goals. And he is getting opportunities on opportunities. And this has just been I don't want to say habit. It could be an aberration in his career. I don't know if he's gone through a stretch that he's gone through here. It's been 2 months now since he scored versus St. Louis, and that was a fine goal, but he's had way better.
He got the one against El Paso, but in the league,
he's had way better looks throughout the course of the season than the one he got in St. Louis. This one is a prime example, in my opinion. And we're talking about it earlier, and you're like, yeah, but also there's only a short list of guys on this team throughout the history of this team who'd be able to chest that to themselves and one time. And so, I get that, but this is what I expect from him. The fact that we have now BV playing the way that he's playing, Buka the way that he played last night, who I thought he looked really good. He creates that chance for Kolmanič to get the goal there. So he needs to get going. It's just frustrating for me because if he's average right now, we're not sitting in ninth place. It's just that's the fact. If he is average, we're not sitting in ninth place. And the expectation is to be much higher than average, way above average. That's what we were brought in here to do. So I also agree with you, though. The body language has been fine. I don't think he's blaming other people, and like it or not, you came in really hot and said a lot of things that were very spicy. And, no one forced you to do that. And we gave Roto shit for that too, with the hiring of Nico after saying what you said. So you got to get it going for me here. And I'm with you. I don't know if I would say I'm very, very confident in his ability to turn this thing around, but I do still believe in it, and I will remain positive, but he's got to get going. It's just a simple fact. He has to.
So coming out of the break, you do get the one sub for Minnesota, Rosales in for Markinick, and then we get an Austin change in the 61st. Ilya Sanchez comes in for Nico Dubersarski, and at the same time, a double change for the Loons with Yeboah and Hlongwane in for Trapp and Gressel. So again, Minnesota bringing some very, very high caliber talent off their bench there. And they did make a change to go more offensive there, pulling off Trapp for Yeboah, and obviously Bongi slotting in on the left there for Gressel.
I mean, it's crazy to think that, you could bring these two subs on for players like Markanic and Gressel, and you actually got more threatening on the offensive side of the ball because you bring in Bongi Hlongwane, who's a speed demon, and Yeboah, who's a great talent. So, I was a bit concerned. I'll focus more so on us. I love the Ilya sub here. We had been playing him, running him up and down, 34-year-old, and we know what he brings to the table. But, to get this in at the 61st minute where you get Duber out of there, who I thought had a fine shift overall as well. There was nothing that I could look to where it was didn't look great. I thought he was totally fine. But to have that veteran leadership out there trying to preserve this lead and potentially go get 3 points, which I thought was available and kind of on the table there for this team. But to see this thing out with Ilya, I thought was the right move. So I do want to credit Nico and again, and the staff again for going ahead and getting these subs earlier than we've seen in this stretch thus far.
Well, I think here's where you kind of get the biggest push from Minnesota in the second half, because there wasn't a ton of clear-cut chances for them. But in the 64th, they win a throw near the corner flag, near side of the broadcast angle, and Boxel comes in, chucks it into the mix where it's headed by Biru and then Yeboah and bounces to the feet of Pereira to the left of net where he hits it on the half volley and BHI clears it out for a corner. I think maybe a little bit lucky to clear it out there because it was just right at him. He happened to be there in the way, and him and Stuver kind of exchanged a little nervous laugh there. It maybe looked like, but they were coming in 66th minute. They win another corner, again, putting some heat on the Austin defense, and Pereira, again, his service is cleared right back to him by Ilya. We're still on that right side of the Austin area, and so once that ball pings right back to him, Ilya closes it down. Pereira cycles it to the top of the 18 to Hlongwane, and he immediately pops across towards the back post. And this is the second moment on the night, I think, and maybe you could have picked out a few others, where Stuver's hesitation just in this moment does not actually come and bite us, but because he starts to step to it.
Yep.
And then he stops and lets it bounce. And luckily, before Yeboah can corral it on the end line, it goes over for a goal kick. But I just don't understand in this moment why you don't come and catch that much, much less punch it out. But there was another chance later where he punches it out. And I know you and Debo and maybe a couple other folks with us said that he could have just caught it. On the replay this morning, and I don't have this in the notes, but on that particular punch, I think it was 72nd minute or something like that. I think he may have been trying to punch it towards Buka for a counterattack, the way he did it. And maybe I'm giving him a little bit too much credit there. But, I mean, he punched it, and it created a one-on-one. Buka doesn't get to the ball in that moment. But anyways, I'm straying off topic. I don't know what he's doing in this moment with that hesitation.
Look, man, that Pereira's got a cannon. Holy smokes. That ball comes off his left foot consistently in the second half. It was just oh my gosh, that is a rifle of a shot. Again, I mean, that's been my only real qualm with Brad this entire time is that I want to see him be more aggressive there. And I'm it's not me who's throwing their body into the mix there, into the flame. Right. So I do understand if there's some hesitation, but I think that's a step for him. You know what I mean? We've been looking for players, particularly field players most of the time, where it's what can you do to take your game to the next level? However small it may be, I think this is something that Brad could level up on and be a little bit better at. And I think it's just a decisiveness thing and being out I'm going to go get this. This is my zone.
Yeah, well, and to be fair to him, against Atlanta, they score the fucking equalizer off a play that started with him getting hit in the air and no call.
Yeah.
So, the officials have to do their job protecting him too. Not that was an issue last night, but it has been in the recent past. So
for sure,
I don't know if that's in his head at all or not. But 71st, you get another double change here for Austin. Obrian and Owen Wolf come in for Bukhari and Brandon Vasquez. And I thought that is where Austin really started to shut things down defensively. But the 82nd minute, so about 10 minutes after those guys come on, you got the Loons probing in the Austin half of the field once again, and a ball from Harvey that I think is intended to play Rosales through into the 18 here gets kind of snapped up by Yeboah instead. Mm-hmm. And Yeboah then, this was much more awkward watching it live than on the replay. I think he meant to do this. He nutmegs Biru and then chases that ball himself into the 18. And Rosales is offside, which I think catches guys like BHI and Svatak a little bit flat-footed. And Yeboah, after he nutmegs him, like I said, just sprints after the ball. And BHI has to spring to life. And before he can close it down, Yeboah gets a shot, but Stuver was on top of it. Tough angle there for Yeboah. So Stuver makes the save, and Kolmanič comes in to clear it out for a throw. But that was certainly one of the more nervy moments in the final 20 minutes or so of this one.
That was super nervy, and yes, upon further review, it does look intentional, but still, I think the communication there has to be better, because we just let this dude essentially beat 4 people on his own because he's chasing this ball down. Great save by Stewart to keep us alive, and I'm glad you brought up the clearance as well, because I thought that was a very clutch clearance by Kolmanič.
85th minute, you get the return of Mikael Dessler in for Kolmanič, which shifted John Gallagher over to that left side, which I think is the first time we've seen Gally at left back this year. If it wasn't, we saw him in the first 2 games, because he has not been on the left since Dessler's been out. So again, the first Dessler appearance since being injured on March 8th. Only getting about 10 minutes here with the stoppage time included. So I don't think a start is in the cards on Wednesday, but maybe coming in at the half, and I would very much welcome that. And I'm sure Johnny's legs would as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, poor John can't get himself off the field. This guy is just running ragged up and down. Go play the left now, Johnny. You got this. Right. So happy to see Dessler back. And this is part of the reason why I'm feeling so encouraged, because he makes us so much better. He just raises the floor of this team consistently for us on both sides of the ball. And like I said, I tipped my cat to the guys earlier about playing this month out and really battling and kind of going to war through this brutal schedule. But the floor gets raised when Dessler's out there, and that's on both sides of the ball. And I think we really started to see the chemistry build between him and Bukari when they both were here last year. Yeah. And I think that is something that they're actually going to be able to really emphasize now that we're going to have Buka over there on the right with Dessler. So super excited for that. Again, Johnny, the Iron Man, he's going to do whatever you ask of him. He's going to do it well. So can't be too upset about it.
Gallagher does pick up a caution in the 88th minute for holding back Hlongwane near the sideline. Professional foul.
Fair.
Then Obrian a minute later gets a yellow card for kicking Romero in the back of the leg, which he got some of the ball. He also got all of the leg there. And then I don't think his pirouette in his rage helped him any with the official last night. I will say, man, I think as a whole, the last 3 matches, I've been very dissatisfied with the officiating, no matter if it's a PRO crew with the MLS match or the crew we had for the Open Cup match against Houston. I thought Joe Dickerson, I believe is his name, I thought him and his crew were very solid last night. So that was a welcome relief that I didn't have any anger towards the officials last night after the last few matches. In the 90th here, Stuver boots it forward, and we were in possession at the back here after a goal kick, and boots it forward towards Azuni, who runs onto it, and a little bit of luck here creating this chance for himself, because it kind of blindly hits off of his shoulder, but it bounces into his own path and behind the line, and so he's got a step on Boxall, and unfortunately, man, this second touch just betrays him. It is not only heavy, but towards the path of Boxall, and allows the Minnesota defender an angle to get back in and slide it away. And that's one disappointment there. But then Austin is able to almost immediately turn Pereira over near the far sideline, where Obi runs onto the loose touch, gets it right back to Mirtu. And Mirtu opts to not play the immediate give and go. I thought there was some space for that. We've seen Hader score goals from the top of the box before in transition. But Mirtu progresses it into the right side of the 18. He does find the foot of Obrian, and he tries to tap it in. I thought it was a great pass, And maybe an even better defensive play by Diaz to get his foot in and deflect the Obrian shot out. And that was about all she wrote last night. But, I mean, I know you want to go back to this breakaway by Mir too.
I mean, this is number 4, right? Like it's
Yeah.
one-on-one with a keeper essentially. And like, this
Yeah.
is such a weird touch. Like, yes, it was a fortunate bounce that this happens and like it kind of gets generated here. And I'd imagine that Mirtu was caught a bit off balance by the way that this ball played out onto the field there, but just a really poor touch. And again, you know, he has chances last night where we could have won this game. And he is always going to be under the microscope more for me because I know he's one of our best players. Like I get that. And for me, if we're going to win games on the road like this, where you steal 3 points from a better team, you know, that you played neck to neck the entire night, that's on the foot of the talent of your best players who go and make something happen. So like, again, I want to say overall his shift last night was good. It was fine, but like it could have been great, which he is. And like, that's what I expect from him. And that's what I think this team needs from him, but we have time. And like, you've now not solidified, but you've created a streak here, a bit of a run with these last couple of performances where it looks really good. Now you go home, you handle business versus RSL, and we're feeling really good about how we closed out this month, how the players are trending, and getting the injured guys back into the fold here.
47% possession for Austin on the night. Again, the 53% mark for Minnesota was the highest for them on the season. 15 shots to 8 in favor of the Loons and 6 shots on target to 3 also in favor of the home team. 4 corners to none for Minnesota. I imagine that's the first time we have been held without a corner kick, but I think a byproduct of the style of play that we went out intending to execute and then did. 2 big chances for Austin. Both of them missed. So I thought it was interesting that the Kolmanič chance did not qualify on FOTMob's model as a big chance. 0.82 XG on FOTMob's model for Austin, 1.44 for Minnesota as we bring up the stats for those watching on the YouTube. Get a couple zooms. The goals on target, 0.58 for Austin, 0.94 for Minnesota. So I think the 1-1, it felt like a fair scoreline when all was said and done to me. Anything else for you? Oh, we got the recalc here on FOTMob. 1.71 XG for Minnesota, now 0.8 for Austin.
That Boxel one was like a 0.62 XG generator, so that was their big chance there. I think both teams probably feel decent about a 1-1 result here. I think both teams had chances to win this game, and I think Minnesota fans probably are feeling similar to us right now that this game was available, but probably a bit worse because it's a home match for their team, and you want to protect home and get 3 points as much as possible. But the thing for me, right, is the possession. 53% for Minnesota. We took them out of what they wanted to do last night, you know, and like they get the goal off of a set piece, and they're fantastic on set pieces. And like they're one of the best teams in the league at set pieces. They generate a lot of good chances, and Boxel will get up there and they are aggressive in those moments. So for them to get that goal off of that, I'm fine with it. Like that, this is a good team. Like this is what they do. But to have them not be able to play the exact style that they've been wanting to play all season, and not only just wanting to play, but executing really well all season. I mean, when I saw their figure for possession at 36.7% or whatever it was, like my jaw actually dropped. I had never seen anything lower than 40 for a team on a season. And usually the teams that are in that 40 range are giving up a shit ton of goals. But we knew that this team also led the league in clean sheets. So this is a very, very good result. I do agree, and I wouldn't argue with anyone who was like, well, we could have got 3 here. Yeah, we could have, and so could have they. But like to be able to get this 1 point, come back home now, and I think it got lost here. But the thing that I was worried about the most before we took off this game, and I said it to you, was how are we going to look without Owen Wolff?
Yeah.
Like, how is it going to look, particularly versus this team where we knew that we were going to have the ball a pretty decent amount because they that's how they want to play, how it was going to look for Austin. And I thought that these do is responded and put in a very solid 90 minutes to go ahead and get a very important point, in my opinion. I know it didn't move us up on the table, but you're still within striking distance now. And as you alluded to earlier, some of these teams that we have on the back half of this season now, the schedule here, where you're moving into these summer months with plenty of time off, are much, much lower quality, lesser quality teams than we've seen in the last 3 weeks of this month of May here. So I'm encouraged right now. Of course, we still got a lot of work to do. We still got a lot to take care of. But you're set yourself up here with this RSL match where you can go ahead and get 3 points and feel really good about yourself going into that San Diego matchup, who is a very good team in their own right. And like we were talking before we jumped on here, it's like Minnesota and Vancouver are not pretenders. This is not you're hot, you're off to the races, that like you're just on a streak right now. These are two very, very good teams, two of the top 10, top 8 teams in the league right now, in my opinion. They have talent, they have speed, they know how they like to play. I'm speaking in generalization here between Vancouver and Minnesota as well. So to get 2 points after you did an 8-1 aggregate versus those teams combined, and now you go ahead and get 2 points off of them, one on the road after a brutal stretch, I think is really important for this team. And I think things are feeling much better. I think Nico's comments have been better. I like the way that he approached this game, and I thought that we executed. They did not execute what they wanted to do. We made them play a different style than they're typically used to, and we're able to get the point. So I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I second all of that. What Nico said in the post-game presser that stuck with me, and I thought was, I guess I just very much agree with it. He said that we need to be humble enough to know that we are not at the level that we want yet in order to impose the way that we want to play against this type of team. And I fully agree with that. And just, again, a lot of what you said, I'm probably just going to parrot here. But like, and there's also, there's obviously different ways to look at this. And if you want to wallow in the sorrow or just be a concern troll, then you can point out the fact that Austin is winless across their last 6 league matches. That's one way to look at things. But like you said, after that, in that stretch of 6 league matches, right? It started with a brutal 3-game losing streak, right? And we're missing 2 very important starters and an important new acquisition, at least somebody we think is going to be very important. We went out and got that guy at the deadline. We're not a team that has made deadline deals to acquire guys. I mean, Memo Rodriguez for Diego Fagundes, that was a salary shedding trade, not a we're bringing this guy in to be a key piece of what we're trying to do type of deal. And I think if you want to look at, right, you can sit there and be like, oh, this team stinks. They haven't won in 6 MLS games. But I don't know, like, I'm just choosing to look at this team as 1 loss over their last 6 in all competitions, coming from the depths of despair that we were in after getting blasted by Vancouver and handled at home the worst home loss ever to this same Minnesota team that you brought up. 8-1 aggregate against those teams, and in the last 8 days, 1-1 aggregate and getting 2 points. And would it be nice to have 4 points or even 6? Of course. But right now, this Austin FC is not better than those 2 teams.
No.
I think they can get there over time, but it's going to take, the vast majority of the rest of the season, if not into next season, if things don't go the way we think they can. And you sandwiched in between those 2 matches that are marked improvements, you sandwich in a beatdown of your biggest rivals in the Open Cup to take you further in the Open Cup than you've ever been. And is getting to the quarterfinals of the Open Cup something that should be celebrated year over year? I don't think so. I think we should probably, especially with the field in the cup the way it is, where I think it's 16 MLS teams and the majority of them did not make the playoffs last year. Like, we should find ourselves in the quarterfinals more often than not, but we never have. And so they took care of business in those games. They've shown improvement while still shorthanded and playing, I think that was the 7th match in 21 days.
Yeah.
Like, and again, some other teams are also dealing with that type of fatigue and that type of schedule congestion. Minnesota is one of them. But I don't think any of their fans are happy with a 1-1 last night. So, like, you did go up there and bring a result back home. But like you've said multiple times already this episode, you have to double stamp it with a win over Real Salt Lake on Wednesday. You have to.
Yep, that's how you make this solidified. And I mean, you look back at the last 4 matchups, right? If you're going to be one of those people who are like, we're win this in the last 6, the only one you can really feel bad about of the last 4 is the Atlanta game, which this game is a fickle, weird fucking sport. And you have that non-call on the offsides that takes place with a crew that was absolutely awful all night long. And Atlanta has their one chance of the entire night, and they go ahead and put it away. And like, that's the only game that I can point to of the last 4 where it was just like, I don't like the way that this team performed or looked. And that necessarily just boiled down to one or 2 possessions, but like, still, we were the better team than Atlanta, and we should have hung multiple goals on them in that matchup. But this result, the 3-1 thrashing of Houston, and then the Vancouver result as well, are all very solid performances. And to be able to see the team and watch them and how it looked differently than it did when we hosted Minnesota the first time at home. And then you have to have the context as well. First half of the Houston game down there in Houston, you outplay that team. Pep goes down, you drop that 2-0, and then that kind of started this whole run there where it's like, we got these injuries now, we're not playing well and everything like that. But if you look at this from the last 4 games with the opportunity to go get these 3 points versus RSL, I think you got to be feeling good about where this team is at right now, particularly as we're getting these dudes back healthy. So I feel pretty good about it, and I thought it was a good result last night.
Man, I'm not here to be the chant police, because I don't want supporters groups to be banned from saying fuck Houston, fuck Frisco, right? Mm-hmm. But like these fucking Minnesota chants, man, where like they're doing their Dale chants and working in fuck you Stuver, fuck you Austin every single time. There was multiple different chants too that when we were defending in their end, they're just saying fuck you Stuver in multiple different songs. I just think it's kind of lame. Because obviously they are putting every single keeper's name into that. And I don't know, man. I just think we can be a little bit more creative. But maybe, I guess that, the responsibility for that is left up to those of us with the creativity down here in Austin. I kid a little bit.
This is after we complimented how kind and nice their fans were when they were down here at Q.
Well, because their fans aren't coming up behind us and dropping F-bombs, not in the north end. But
no, not in Stuver.
We didn't drop Fs on Dane. But next time you guys come, I'm going to remind St. Clair, hey, we owe you some F-bombs, buddy.
There we go. He's on the list. Mark it.
Anything else for you, E, before we move on?
No, I'm just going to come back to the Owen thing one more time. Because if you look at the entire course of the season, he has been our best, most consistent player. He needed rest. I've made my jokes several times. I've beaten this joke to death at this point, so I won't even bring it up again. But like, he needed rest last night, and to go ahead and get that point and have him ready to go full tilt versus RSL is a cherry on top of this game, in my opinion, because that's when we're at our full strength, and that's when we're really, really at our best. And now I'm done.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you have to tie it together with a victory here at home on Thursday. So RSL coming to town. This is the first time that we have met up with this team this season here, E. And you know that we have to have a little bit of a history lesson here. So Real Salt Lake coming to town, 7:30 kickoff on Wednesday night. Just a heads up, we have looked ahead a little bit to the forecast. There are some storms there, like a 40% chance right now on Wednesday evening, so fingers crossed for no weather delays, because we've had weather delays against RSL before, and they did not go swimmingly.
No.
But quick history lesson on RSL for those who are new to the North End or new to Austin FC fandom. Real Salt Lake was founded all the way back in 2004, began MLS play as the league's 12th franchise in 2005. They were initially owned by a businessman by the name of Dave Checketts. I was not familiar with him, but he has either been in an ownership role or a C-suite role for the Jazz, the Knicks, the New York Rangers, the New York Liberty, Madison Square Garden, and the St. Louis Blues. So this is a guy who was around a lot of different professional sports franchises. In 2022, they sold the team to Ryan Smith and David Blitzer. And then just last month, sold again to Miller Sports and Entertainment for $600 million. So 2 times in the last 3 years. RSL has changed hands in terms of their ownership. And they've had a decent amount of success for a team that's been around for 2 decades. They won MLS Cup in 2009. Of course, there were many fewer teams in the league back then, but they were also second in the Shield race and second in the U.S. Open Cup in both 2010 and 2013. And they were the first American club to get to the final of CONCACAF Champions League during the group stage format. That was in 2011. But since that bout of success between 2009 and 2013, not a ton to speak for. Certainly no trophies. They had a 3rd place finish in the West last season. That was their highest finish since finishing 3rd in the West in 2019. But they have made the playoffs 6 of the last 7 seasons. So coached by Pablo Mastroeni since August of 2021. And, you think about this matchup historically between these 2 teams. Austin FC 3 wins, 2 draws, and 4 losses all time against Real Salt Lake. But at least for me, and I think for most of the diehards, RSL showing up on the schedule is always going to elicit a couple special memories because RSL was the opponent when Moussa Djite scored the first ever hat trick in club history back in September 2022. And that was the same match that the hat trick of Djite powered Austin to their first ever playoff berth. So a little double whammy there against RSL. And then just over a month later, the 2 teams met in the first round, the first ever Austin FC playoff game that started off as a disaster, going down 2-0 very early on, getting one back, then an RSL red card, and then taking until, we had some stoppage time drama there with the handball, the penalty scored by Driussi. Neither team can score in extras, and Austin ends up advancing on penalties. This is a matchup that has been fairly balanced over the 4+ years that we've been in this league. There have rarely been blowouts. The 3-0 for Austin and the 5-1 in June of last year in favor of RSL are the only 2 games in this matchup historically that have really gotten out of hand.
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to be, a 5-1 or a 3-0 on Wednesday, just because that's not our MO this season. But it's not theirs either. And this one is very much there for the taking.
This would be a matchup where you could do it on. They're not a very good team. They're not good. That's as simple as it really gets for me right now. Just looking through their fixtures this season, and they got some wins versus some teams that you caught them at the right time, in my opinion. Like you see the Seattle matchup that they won earlier this year. I think you just caught Seattle at the right time. They weren't playing the way that they are playing at this moment. You get a win versus the Galaxy. You catch Houston early, who again, I think was not hitting their stride at that point in time. And obviously that roster has been reloaded now down there in Houston to make them a much more formidable opponent. And then you round it out with a solid victory over San Diego. But this team is basically a one-man show, in my opinion. They got Diego Luna, who's got 8 goals of their 15 total. That's their guy. That's the dude who makes everything go for them. But they don't do anything particularly well. I know you were doing a deeper dive into some of these players they're starting, and I believe it was like next pro level players, correct? Or was that something I went wrong there?
So just specifically in last night's game, right now, so one thing we can and should do here is bring up the roster sheets and check out what RSL's got in terms of their roster build. I believe this is a 2-4 team. It is, but right now it's a 1-4 team. It's just Diogo Gonçalves as their lone designated player, and he was out last night. Had a heel injury sustained in practice about a week ago, and so I would imagine he will be questionable at best coming into this one on Wednesday night. But this is a roster right now, a franchise that is relying heavily on their supplemental roster, on development. Look at the outrageous number of off-roster homegrowns that they have signed to first-team deals here. This is a team that is just, they don't, well, they do now. They traded for Willie Agata at the deadline. Willie Agata, a 25-year-old, I believe Nigerian striker, who was with Sporting KC over the last 4 seasons, in a very, very dangerous forward. but he's gotten to his new digs and has not been able to generate anything, much to the chagrin of our best ball roster, buying in on the Agata as the lone striker here.
I'm just going back to this 5-1 game, right? And walking away with how impressed I was with their team. Yep. And then looking at this roster now compared to where it was. I mean, you had Chicho Arango, right? Andres Gomez, who was a nightmare for us that day. Anderson Julio, who was a nightmare for us that day. And all three of those guys are gone. Really, like they don't even have Ojeda anymore. Oh no, they do have Ojeda still. But like this is just a team. They're playing a backup keeper. McMath's been out all season. So like they're just not the club that wants, like, because that the 5-1 game is really stuck in my head, obviously, for 5 reasons. So like just to look at this team now, it's so confusing to me. I know they made a pretty decent amount of money on selling those guys on, but you just didn't replace them with nearly the level of talent that you need to in order to be a competent roster in this league. So like this is a very confusing team to me, and I know that Gonçalves is dinged up right now, right? He's got a heel thing going on, so I don't even know if he's going to be available if you play him on the road here, or you go ahead and try to get, because we looked at their schedule going forward, you get the Galaxy coming up, which is a much more winnable game than us, because obviously they haven't won a fucking game over there in Carson. So like this roster just confuses the shit out of me, and I really respect Diego Luna. I think he's one of the best young players in the league, probably in the country, and he's a great player. And like I said, 8 goals with their 15. He's doing it all for them right now.
Yep. When you mentioned, right, you get rid of Chicho in the trade market, right? Sent him over to San Jose for what I think was like $1.5 million in GAM and an international roster slot, which feels cheap. I think with Chicho, there's stuff that's behind the scenes that goes on with him at his multiple stops. I think that had some, there was the mysterious suspension he caught last year that I don't think was ever disclosed what it was exactly for. But also, like, you remember fucking Matty Crooks, that big bastard. He was giving us problems. He's gone now, transferred to championship side back in England. And you mentioned that they're starting Rafa Cabral in net. Very, very veteran keeper, to put it nicely. I think like 450 plus appearances in his career. Getting close to age 40, I think, is Cabral. Because Gavin Beavers was sold on to Brøndby over there in the Danish Superliga. Anderson Julio was traded, right? And he, is not a DP level player, but he's given Austin some issues in the past with his speed, and he's in Dallas now. So the fact that this team has just 2.1 million in GAM right now with a 2-4 build, only 1 DP, and a roster that outside of your special slots is not boasting a ton of great talent, right? Like Agata, Emeka Anelli. Outside of that, like, who is really a game-changing talent on this roster? I don't see a ton. It's playing out in the results that you talked about, right? It's kind of a who have they beaten? Kind of nobody. But you could also say that about us. So, especially if you're looking at from the outside looking in and not, following Austin FC like the sickos do here. 14 points from their 15 matches, sitting in 12th in the West, -7 goal differential, which is identical to Austin, but they have allowed 22 goals in those 15 matches. I also think it's notable that Luna, as of last night, then Katranis, their left back, and Ojeda, who you mentioned, who came off the bench for them last night, all of those guys are on yellow card accumulation watch coming into Wednesday's match. So maybe further motivation for them to let Diego Luna take a little bit of a rest after playing 90 with the Galaxy coming up on Saturday. Let him come in at the end while they're down a couple goals, get his appearance. That goes towards his accumulation total. And then, you guys are ready to beat the Galaxy on Saturday. So, I don't know, man. I respect the coach here. I think Mastroeni has kind of always, because he came in right around the time that we're, a couple months after our 2021 expansion season started. And I just always get the feeling that he gets more out of his players than just kind of the talent floor that he has. And so, like, this is no pushover team, but it is a team, one of the first in a while, that I think you are clearly the favorites playing this one at home.
Yes, absolutely. And if you play the way that you played versus Minnesota and Vancouver, you play this team at home, you're going to beat them. Simple as that, in my opinion. Also, they have a huge factor built into playing there at that elevation. That's a very real thing, and they aren't taking care of business at home. And we know that they've been a notoriously weaker team when they go away from America First Field, which is what a bold name that is there. Holy smokes. In an international sport, America First Field.
Yep.
So, and I also don't want to get too far ahead of myself and be disrespectful towards this team, but they are a one-man show. This is the Diego Luna show. If Gonçalves is not healthy as well and not full speed, then they're really in trouble. And I think we're just the better club outright than they are. And this is one of the teams that you go ahead and you take care of business at home and you feel really, really good about yourself. And again, it puts the double stamp on what you've been able to do over these last 3 contests with some quality opponents.
Yeah, and I think you got to feel pretty good about where the 2 teams are sitting in terms of their mentality right now. Because it wasn't just that they played last night and a lot of those guys went 90.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute dagger at the death.
Yep.
Because Vancouver was in town last night and RSL up 2-0, 4 minutes in.
Yep.
And then Brian White fucking brace 20 and 25th minute, of course. We've seen that before. And Pedro Vite gets the winner for Vancouver in the 90th minute. I mean, that's just brutal. And you ran Dominic Markchuk, who's their right winger, U22. Diego Luna, 90 minutes. Xavier Goza was their 18-year-old homegrown, making just his 2nd start in his career for the first team. The first one came a year and a half ago on decision day 2023.
Mm-hmm.
He gets the goal in the opening minute. Like, if he's out there for Markchuk again, you just have to feel good about where the talent lines up in this game on Wednesday, right? Emeka Eneli was great last year. I think he's been battling some injuries coming back here in 2025. They just don't have a lot of consistency with their lineup, with their results. And again, I think I've maybe talked my RSL points out here and ready to talk about Austin. But do you have anything else to add on these guys?
I'll just say that I do respect Mastriani. I think he's a good coach and somebody who can make a game plan that could be threatening to us. So stay on your toes there. But if you look at this from a talent standpoint, up and down this roster, we're the better team. Yeah,
and so talking about us, I think we certainly get Owen Wolf back in there. I wouldn't be shocked. Yeah, no, I think Ilya. I think Ilya as well, and I think probably Sabovic. But I mean, I don't think Danny's coming back and starting right away. That's not really a possibility. So I'm gonna get that out of my head right now. Okay. That's a dream world I like to live in sometimes. I just can't wait until he's able to start again. I don't think you need any rotation from the DPs, especially with the extra day here going Saturday to Wednesday. You're more concerned about that rotation Wednesday to Saturday. So I would expect all 3 DPs out there. If somebody's going to sit, Mirtu would be the favorite for me after going 90 last night, but he should be fine.
I think he's fine.
I know BV's been dealing with that knee bruise or whatever he's got going on. I know it was taped up a little bit last night, but I still expect him to get out there and start it. He hasn't really been too worse for the wear. The guy's been on fucking fire. So, and what do you do with the back line? I think for me, it's Fatak BHI. It's Johnny over there until Dessler can come in. And Biro on the left. Look, John's coming off a very, very good game. Certainly the best in the box score for him in his Austin tenure. But I think you just get Biro back in there.
Yeah, I mean, we're not relying on goals from Kolmanič. He got yours.
Sure.
I'm not expecting another one. So, you want to go back to the much more solid defensive option here, in my opinion, with Biro. I'm right there with you with the center backs. It's BHI and Svatak. I don't want to see us get cute with Julio here. And then, Johnny's going to have to go. We know Johnny's going to be ready to go. And if you can get him out at the 45-minute mark, I think you're feeling really great. They bring Dessler on at half. Owen, full tilt all the way in. let him go for
Yeah.
90. I think you can get Ilya. I think from what you've seen out of Duber as of late, I think he's a much more competent sub now at this point than he was. He's feeling much better about himself than he was
Looks
earlier.
more comfy, right?
Yep. Much more better about himself than he was earlier this season. So I think you can go ahead and get that rotation from Ilya if you do need that later in the game. But let's just jump out on this team. You know what I mean? Let's just jump out and get a quick 1-2 on these guys and just put this thing to bed. You know what I mean? Because like you said, they have all these guys on yellow card accumulation. You might just want to get them their little pass to go ahead and get that reset. And after that heartbreaking loss that they just had, you know, they're going to be pretty exhausted. I don't see them coming out on top of their game, whatever that may be for this team. So I'm right there with you as well. I think Mirtu would be the guy if you're going to rotate a DP who would go to the bench, but I don't necessarily think he needs it. If he does, I'm fine with Hot Air coming in, who I thought has put in some decent shifts in his own right as of late. And I'd like to see him get going too. You know what I mean? Like he's, you know, we don't want him to be our leading scorer again, for sure. Right. But I do want him to go ahead and get something on the books here this season because he has that capability. Another guy that we've been asking to move around a little bit. So I think I'm right there with you. You go back to your 4-3-3, your bread and butter here. You don't need to get too cute with this team. You're just going to have to go out there and perform, and I think you're going to be able to.
Unless you got anything else to add here, how much is Austin FC winning by on Wednesday?
I think this is a vindicating win here, a stamped win that this team needs. And I think that especially from the comments we've been hearing from not only the coach, but some of the players as well, where it's like, yes, this was a good game for us, but we know we're better and we want to take that next step. This is the team to take that next step on. Give me 3-1 Austin.
All right. I got 2-0 Austin. So the North End no longer in alignment, but pats on the back to both of us. We were aligned on Thursday's episode. And the 1-1 comes through for us. I think maybe the first fucking time all year we got a score right. So we'll take it and we'll move on. Don't care how you get it done, boys. Just bring us back the 3 points.
Come on down to Farmer Field where the champions play. Get ready for the game. It's last business day.
Last business day here on episode 227 of the North End podcast, taking on Loons 2 out at the pitch on Friday evening. Some good things to see in this lineup. Peter Grogan back in there, Micah Burton back in there, Irvin Torres back in there. No Riley Thomas, he was still with the first team. I have a question. I know you don't know the answer, but I'm just posing it in general. Jules Berry is one of the players that Austin FC 2 signed, I believe, from the Monaco Academy in the preseason. Where is he? He has not played. I don't think we've seen pictures of him in practice. I'm not sure what's up with that. So maybe somebody with more information can enlighten us. But I just thought that it was something that crossed my mind while I was watching this match. But seeing this one on Friday, man, I mean, we can go through this fairly quickly because we're already over an hour here on episode 227. But here in the first half, man, I thought Austin in the first half hour were the aggressors in the 18th minute. Great ball from Irvin up to your boy Alice Tway on the right side. It broke 2 lines with this pass, did Irvin. And Jorge ushers it out to Jimmy on the right. And Jimmy's able to get it cross in towards Grogan, and Peter heads it on frame. It's a good save by the Minnesota keeper here to get it out for a corner, and there was nothing doing on that corner. But 6 minutes later, long spell of Austin possession that ends up with a shot from Alice Tway that's saved away again. But Austin recovers it, keeps it in possession. Micah gets on that rebound. He drops it back to Irvin, who takes a shot of his own. That one gets deflected out for a corner, and then on that corner, the ball gets headed to the top of the 18 by a Loons defender. Bonachera is there to nod it back into the mixer for Micah on the left side of the target. Micah pings it back across, and Peter Grogan's there to tap it home for the lead. So Peter back into the lineup, gets the opening goal and an assist to Micah. You love to see it, both on paper and when you watch it back. This was well worked by the guys to keep it in there and end up finishing it off.
And these were the guys we were wondering where they were. Grogan,
Yeah.
Micah, Irvin as well. I think this, outside of once we get Riley back into the fold here, I think this is going to be one of our better choice 11 lineups that we have with Jimmy flanking that wing as well. So super happy to see this. Can you tell me the guy, I keep calling him Charlie. How do you say, because obviously it looks like Farrar.
Yeah, I think it's Farah, but I'm not totally sure. Again, because I'm not going to the fucking Next Pro broadcast for pronunciation guides. Because, dude, and this one was even worse than normal, dude. On the final PK, he says Austin United.
Oh, well, let's ask Keith Costigan how to say it. Maybe he knows.
Just get P-Mike on the case there. Sorry, tangent. Second half here, though, and Minnesota, after they do concede, I thought for the rest of the match, they were the team that was on the front foot. And you can see, again, the stats don't always tell the full story, but 3 big chances created for Minnesota, none for Austin on the night. And you can see 13 shots to 10 with 5 on 4 to target, both in favor of the visitors. Triple sub here for Austin in the 61st. I don't fully understand this one because you get Gonzalez, Abarca, and Badawia in. That's not where I take issue. Irvin, Jimmy, and Micah are the trio that come off. So, again, on any given night, those guys could be the favorites to be your 3 best players on the pitch. 2 of them are first-team guys, and the third one you think is coming fairly soon.
Yeah.
And after that is where you concede. So, again, that's not the absolute reason that they conceded, but it was certainly an easier time for Minnesota after that change was made, because in the 65th, long ball over the top from Minnesota, it takes a bounce. And certainly, again, none of those guys that subbed on had a hand in this instance because Van Ryn misjudges it. And I thought Nico had a great game on the night. He headed a sure goal off the line in the first half and celebrated heartily as he should have, but misjudges it here. And it allows Randall, the 17-year-old Liberian forward we were talking about on Thursday.
Yep.
It allows him the space to just tap it over Charlie. And that goes off the post, but he's able to poke it home on the rebound before Austin can recover. And that was just a really tough moment, man, because I think Van Ryn has been very, very solid this year.
Yeah.
And just a tough moment for him that Minnesota is able to capitalize on.
Sometimes it's a tough bounce like that. But it's even weirder with those substitutions, knowing that these games can go into pens, and want to have those guys available. 3 of our better players, like you mentioned there. So interesting move here. But happy with the fact that we were able to go ahead and get this done in the penalty spot.
Well, we don't know if those guys, because those are also the 3 guys that may be the most likely, certainly outside of the back line with a guy like Antonio Gomez or Riley Thomas. Those 3 guys may have spent a lot of time in training with the first team over this last week. Who knows? Maybe they just are kind of pulling double duty in practice. I'm not sure. Just complete speculation here. We'll get back on track. Vlad comes in for Peter Grogan in the 73rd. And then right at the death, very nervy moment in the 3rd minute of stoppage, as the Loons get a stab at net after a deflected cross isn't cleared out by Austin. And Charlie saves that shot, but doesn't secure it, and another Minnesota attacker puts it in the net. Luckily, the flag goes up. He was offside, and we go to pens where it opens up hot because Masanvi, one of their first-team assets, sends his over, and Ruben Bonachera, who appears to be the penalty kick taker for this team, he scores it calmly, and then the second Loons player skies his as well, and we're off to the races. Jorge buries his past the Minnesota keeper, even though that keeper guessed right. Minnesota stays alive by making their 3rd and 4th shots. That 4th shot, Charlie guessed right, just couldn't keep it out of the net. But Daniel Chiesla scores his 3rd, and then Antonio Gomez wins it. And in the notes, I said the announcer continuing to struggle here because that's when he said the extra point for Austin United or something to that effect. But Jesus Christ, man. We'll take the 2 points. Take a look at the table. You're now up to 12 points. You've got a game in hand on a couple of these teams that are above you in the table. But there's also 2 teams in the table in Minnesota and the Town FC that have games in hand on Austin. So you just got to start stringing some of these results together. And this is a team in FCTO now that is unbeaten in their last 3. So you're pointing in the right direction.
Yes, and that's what we've been looking for, trending in the right direction here, able to get 2 penalty victories in this little 3-game stretch with the victory sandwiched in between there. So getting the positive momentum going. We've been wondering, what's up with Irvin? What's up with Micah? Good to see them back into the fold here. Hopefully Dessler gets back. Back. Hopefully Dessler's full go. No sort of setbacks for him, and Riley can be shifted back to this FCTO club to get him some more important minutes. But yeah, you're starting to move in the right direction. And like you said, sitting on 9 games here. But there's plenty of time with this season, and I think you're starting to build some positive momentum. And you just got to keep this thing moving in the right direction. I think we can.
Yeah, and Friday we'll preview this match on Thursday's episode. But your get-back spot here against the Dynamo, who got you 2-0 at their – I think it was 2-0, not 2-1. But either – I guess it's probably on the screen there. Yeah, 2-1 4 games ago between these two teams. That one was in Houston with Steph Cleveland in net. You would imagine Steph is not going to be in net for this one, but this will be Friday at the pitch, so we'll preview that match against Dyna Dose on Thursday's episode.
Wow, the best keeper in the world.
Got a Damian Loss update from our resident Louisville City fan, Trevor Allison. And Damian, interestingly enough, in last night's game against Monterey Bay, was not initially in the starting lineup. But ended up starting and playing after an injury in warm-ups to their backup, Danny Faundes, which I always think is a funny name, considering Austin's history. It was a 2-0 win over Monterey Bay, who was in the top 4 of the Western Conference, and Trevor says it was a pretty comprehensive win from Louisville City. Not as close as the scoreline suggests. Damian wearing an all-red keeper kit for what he thinks is the first time this season. 9 total shots for Monterey Bay, only 2 of them on target. A few other well-hit shots that were off frame. Very little to report for Damian. In the first half, Louisville was aggressive in their pressure and moving forward, and the ball stayed in their attacking half basically the whole time. In our Remember Some Guys segment, Louisville City's second goal is scored by Manny Perez in the 48th with a nice finish after some poor play by the Monterey Bay center back. Manny then took the long route to the corner flag and hit the Dougie with the subs who were warming up on the sideline right here in the year of our Lord 2025. Good save from Damian. And he did. I should have had this pulled up, so I apologize, Trevor. He did include the link to seeing Manny Perez doing the Dougie with the subs. A good save from Damian in the 56th minute after a Monterey player was in on goal after some good passing moves and took a decent shot that Damian was able to use a strong hand to palm it away. Other save was an easy one at his feet from a fairly soft header. Another player missed a bike attempt at the same time, which would have been a much more difficult save. Not much else for Damian to do in the dominating performance. 51-49 possession in favor of Monterey. But Louisville had almost twice as many passes in the final third and more than twice as many touches in the penalty area. And the announcers on the game were the weird crew that we had from our Open Cup win against Houston. So there is your comprehensive report on the comprehensive win by Louisville City. So salute to Trevor, and keep it up, Damian, in Louisville City.
Quite comprehensive indeed.
Right, we'll close things out here with a quick best ball update. Of course, we came out. I don't think, we put this out on Friday. So we talked about how We Are Austin TV won the midweek games. That was now about 10 days ago, right? That was the match day where we tied Atlanta. We Are Austin 55 points. No other team puts up more than 38, and no other team puts up less than we did with our 28 here, E. So We Are Austin extending their lead there in the midweek, and then we go to the weekend, and the Verde Pendant get their first win of the season. So congrats to the lads with their 52. And we are in the mud, my friend. Another weekly low, 35 points for the North End. Lucky for us, Soccer-wise only outscored us by 4 and Moon Tower by 1. So we remain relatively stagnant there in the middle of the table. But We Are Austin another 43. Verde all day a 49. So we've got some pretty clear tiers here with the top 2 teams coming out of the transfer window draft. Then another group of 3. And the Verde Pendant, man, I mean, the way we are trending right now, we're going to be in that bottom tier sooner rather than later. So hopefully, we're recording here on Sunday. There are still games to be played and finished up here on Sunday in week 15. But I know we at least got a brace from Sam Surridge last night, and some Sunday night soccer magic from Evander would be welcomed
I'm literally looking at FC Cincinnati right now. So, give us a hat trick, Evander.
Is he starting? Did you see the lineup? I know that may have just come out. I'm not sure.
Let me take a peek.
Oh, goddamn.
Yeah, he's in there. Let's go.
All right. Whew.
All right.
Come
and
on.
we got Orejano too, yeah?
Oh, yeah, we do. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we had some decent performances, I think, from Kai Wagner, but we'll take a clean sheet and a goal contribution from
We need something, baby.
Orejano. So,
We need
oh,
something.
man. We'll recap the picks from the weekend on Thursday's episode. We will also recap the picks from the midweek, because not only can you go to the northendpodcast.com for the match preview article that will be out on Tuesday morning previewing the Real Salt Lake match, but you will also have midweek betting picks from us, underdog picks at the books. I know the underdog pick came up one Eddie Ocampo shot short from the official pick, but if you delved into some of those secondary picks, as we of course did, profitable week here in the North End. Hopefully you tailed some of those secondary picks as well. Thank you to New York City for scoring 3 late goals today. That really helped.
Yeah, we like that indeed.
Anything else for you, E, before we shut it down?
Excited for Wednesday, man. Excited for 3 points. Absolutely. Excited to get back to the queue, have a little fun, get a dub. Let's do it.
Yeah, stay on this upward trajectory. So appreciate everybody tuning in, sticking with us here in episode 227 of the North End Podcast. We will be back on Thursday, recapping the first team's match against RSL, previewing the first team's trip out to San Diego for the first time in club history, previewing the second team's match against Houston Dynamo 2, and talking about everything else that happens in the Austin FC universe between now and then. Enjoy the beginning of your week, everybody. We'll do the same. We'll see you at the Q on Wednesday and back here on Thursday for another episode. Until then, he is E, and I'm Zach. Vamos Austin FC, everybody. Goodbye.